Hi, my name is Bryce Bailey, and this is my final thesis project for History 201 with Ryan Lancaster. Through an advancement in technology and an increase in the general population during the Industrial Revolution, the environment was subject to harmful chemicals, fossil fuels, and a depletion of natural resources. This ultimately left a negative impact on the environment. To first start breaking down these points, I want to dive into what the Industrial Revolution actually was. The Industrial Revolution is this idea of transitioning from an economy dependent on farming and handcraft to one supported by industry and machine manufacturing. We really started to see this transition in Britain during the 1700s and expand worldwide from there. During this time, new energy sources were being adapted, new machines were being invented, new working systems were curated, and so on. At the time, the impact of fossil fuels, water pollution, deforestation, and other pollutants weren't a concern. We were just focused on growing as fast as possible to meet the ever-changing needs of society. Additionally, there was a gap of knowledge in the dangers of pollution. Both of these factors combined resulted in the vast number of deposits. Only in recent years have we started putting an emphasis on environmental programs to aid and assess the damage we curated during the revolution. This is in no way me condoning the behavior at the time, but instead an attempt to explain why our behavior was so inappropriate. Through my research, I found there were 4 major categories of nature impacted. This includes the air, water, soil, and habitats. The first category to be looked at is arguably the most impacted category, that being the air. At the start of the Industrial Revolution, coal-fired factories were starting to become a backbone of the modern industry. They were characterized by spewing soot into the air and became a staple in urbanized locations. Coal was also used to power the newly developed steam engine and was a dependable energy source for the time. The overuse of coal directly resulted in polluted air and helped formulate smog, a fog that lingers over cities, creating a darker or blackened environment. The smog and pollution got so bad to the point where it started covering the surrounding environment, more specifically, birch trees. Birch trees were a sanction for the peppered moth as they used their white and black camouflage to blend in with the environment. But as the white trees turned black, the peppered moths had to adjust. Through natural selection, they slowly changed their colors from white and black to strictly black in order to blend in with their environment. This shows the extent to how bad pollution got throughout the years, essentially transforming the surrounding environment into a new habitat. This leads right into my next point of habitat destruction from the Industrial Revolution. Even in today's world, where we know of the impacts of habitat destruction, we continue to overuse our resources. So in a time where research was at a minimum and the need for products was skyrocketing, destruction was very common. A mass need for lumber resulted in forests being cut down. Ecosystems are destroyed and replaced by roads and railways to even further expand our ability to transport resources. Strip mines and gravel pits are deposited in areas, and a vicious cycle is created. With more resources being harvested, a need for more ways of transportation are required, and so on. Destroying these habitats results in ecosystems being disrupted, and we start to see a normalization of animal extinction. There were very little to no protection policies at the time, so as species were unable to relocate or adapt, extinction was inevitable. Another resource majorly affected by pollution was water. Ultimately, water is a resource where any contamination is dangerous, but the main source of pollution at this point in time is contamination from industrialized locations built next to water sources. Toxins from these places leached into the water in all kinds of forms, including solid, liquid, and gaseous. Runoff waste disposal and improper plumbing techniques are the main transits for pollutants, but it's important to note the list goes on. Cholera, a very deadly disease, started wreaking havoc during the Industrial Revolution. It was a very widespread disease stemming from a bacterial infection of the intestines, resulting from fecal matter being dumped into our drinking water. This lack of sanitary knowledge resulted in many deaths across the country and remains a staple in how human interference with nature can be a very harmful consequence. Finally, we're going to be looking at a lesser known victim of pollution, our soil. It's already understood that improper disposal of chemicals and waste leads to a variety of issues for our water sources, and the same goes for our soil. Lead being one of the most common contaminants Other heavy metals and chemicals made their way into our dirt, deeming the land unusable for agriculture. Another way the soil was contaminated was through our irrigation. If the water we used for irrigation was already contaminated, it would transfer into our soil and ultimately leave the soil useless. This happened across the country, and even today we are dealing with the problems the Industrial Revolution caused to our soil. The Industrial Revolution was a time of innovation and new ideas. There were many benefits to this new exploration of work, but the environment was subject to massive amounts of harm. This is a great example of how we as humans should not dive into things without complete understanding, because there could be detrimental consequences.